Hello YouTubers, I'm going to do a couple courses in welding. Um, Basically 90% of welding today in most fabrication shops is done with MIG welding. There's still a lot of stick welding. If it's like a heavier shop, it does a lot of industrial stuff, it'll be quite a bit of stick welding, but for the most part, I mean, we all know it's MIG welding is the thing today, and it's fast and it's relatively easy to do. So I'm just going to cover some things in MIG welding that, just some of the basics, and just kind of ramble on about, some tips and tricks about MIG welding and how to get going in it. And, maybe there'll be a little information for some people that have been MIG welding for a long time. And, I've been welding for 20 odd years, and I've done quite well in welding. And, I've held tickets in pretty much everything. And just like to share a little bit of that basic knowledge with you guys there, just to help you out around your own home shops, because sometimes that's all it takes. You may not know what you're doing wrong, but it's just not working out, and sometimes it's the simplest thing with welding, just understanding the machine or what have you. But first of all, I'll just show you my MIG welder. It's a sort of a standard industrial shop welder. It's a Lincoln Power Mig 255. I've owned a lot of different MIG welders. This is probably about, getting on the 10th or more MIG welder that I've owned over the years. I've been very selective, and I've done a lot of consumer reviews and things as I've, gone along and bought them. The Lincoln Power Mig is by far one of the finest MIG welders that have ever been created. Before this machine came out, there was lots of issues with MIG welders. The way they fed the wire, and you always had problems with the wire bunching up. This machine here, it's got a lovely little drawer here for all kinds of stuff. You can put tons of wire in there, and all your tips and rollers and things like that. It was one of the first machines that had a digital readout. These numbers, when you get into MIG welding, these numbers are important, but they're basically a rough reference of the heat output. The 18 to 21 volt range kind of covers an awful lot of stuff in the typical shop, upwards of 1/4 inch material. There's always these little graphs on the inside of these machines. I kind of got my spool gun in the way here. Hold on. Let's get that out of the way there. So we can open this up. And there's always these graphs telling you, if you're welding 1/4 inch material and you're using this size wire, I'm using 035. And it's telling me, see if it's black, it's 100% CO2, or if it's white, it's the like the MIG mix. Well, very few people use carbon dioxide purely. In fact, it's almost rarely used nowadays, unless you are one cheap bastard. You're not saving a lot of money, and you're creating a lot more misery with the spatter and that sort of thing. I never recommend you run CO2 only. That's definitely sort of a thing from the 80s and 90s. We just don't do it anymore. The MIG mix is a bit more money. You're almost probably 40% more expense for a MIG mix. And this isn't even a great MIG mix. This is just basically C25, what they're showing here. You can always get like a premium MIG mix, which has a little bit of like 1% oxygen or hydrogen, something like that. Allows spray arc welding to occur. With C25, you can spray, but it's not like the perfect smooth spray arc. We'll dabble into that a little more later. That's more of a advanced technique. But anywho, what I'm getting at is that just ignore these guides, okay? The best thing these guides can do for you is tell you what size wire for what size material. As you can see, the 025 scale is for the thinner materials. So you got your 22 gauge up to your 12 gauge, and when it gets over 12 gauge, which is really only about 1/8 material, 025 is really not much use to you. So 030, it only goes to 3/16. So, you know, between there and there is not a huge difference. The 035 covers a huge range. It goes as low as 18 gauge all the way up to 5/16 and really anything up to half an inch. You know, the guide actually stops there, and so the reality is 035 is about the best typical fab shop stuff. Kind of covers everything. It's a little cheaper because it's so commonly used. It's produced a little, you know, more in quantity, so pound for pound, the 035 is the way to go. Getting back to this machine, I'm running only a 10-pound spool. I must have picked that up somewhere real cheap because otherwise I wouldn't have bought it. A machine like this can run a 44-pound spool, and I usually run a 44-pound spool. I have a new one here. It's not a new one. It's another one that I picked up, you know, for practically nothing because I am a cheap bastard, as you all know. Anywho, the Lincoln Power Mig 255 was a revolutionary machine, mostly because of the drive roller system setup. It was a very beefy setup. It was a very simple to change type of a setup. It was all, you didn't need any tools, you didn't need any Allen keys or anything like that. You could take this off real easy. This here was all just twist, kind of a twist lock system, so you could change the rollers very quickly. It was, you know, and one real simple thing that they came up with, which was so simple and yet changed everything. Years past, this used to be this way, and the wire would come out straight, and then this gun would be straight out, but the reality was the gun was always on the ground. It created a big kink, and that would cause a lot of friction inside the liner. So something so simple as building it on an angle so it would come out, you know, relatively straight, it solved so many problems, but it was such a simple solution, you know. And this is the thing that separated Lincoln from everybody else. You know, just amazing machine. So that's sort of some of the basics of part one. I'm gonna shut this down, and we'll do part two. Some more hands-on stuff.